talk about some things, and I'm going to try and talk about them in a light fashion, the way I do to my children at night, rather than a heavy one when I'm trying to be serious and address serious things. I've been reading G.K. Chesterton, who treats very serious subjects so brilliantly and lightly that you feel as if you're reading champagne when you read Chesterton. And I want to talk about some dreams this afternoon to finish up. And I know, what do I have, 5 minutes by now, or 10 minutes, or 15 minutes? Should keep an eye on it. Plenty of images. But first of all, I want to thank Robert and the Utah chapter, and Deanne and all the people here, the Baird family, who have taken me in like a lost child and put me in their home and fed me and taken care of me when I've been out here, and who have put on this astonishing conference. I feel like I'm at a revival meeting of people I really like. We couldn't, in 20 years at the ICA, we never put together an event like this, and I think you put it together in under a year, which is, saying something indeed. And I will say that it's a testament to the Utah chapter, and frankly to all the chapters, and I will say this emphatically, I think the chapters of the ICA are the future. And I know that everybody in New York believes that, to the extent that New York is going to become a chapter of its own. And I think it will be very good for that to happen. The other people that I want to thank are the group of students who are out here that have been here all week, the students of the Beaux-Arts Atelier, and their teachers. When Robert told me, I think the BAA students should come out to the conference, and I think they should come out for a week. And I started thinking, wow, we're going to raise the money. And Robert said, don't worry, we'll pay for it. I don't know, we'll pay for it somehow. Maybe we'll send a plane to get them. I don't know, something will help me. I said, I'll chaperone them if the plane comes. Anyway, you are the future. You're the future of the ICA, you're the future of the Beaux-Arts Atelier, you're the future of another school I'm not going to talk about today, although I'll put it up in a minute, although it's inspired by this image here. And this image is up only because it's a beautiful image, and it's kind of what we've all been talking about, although I missed it yesterday, but I'm eagerly looking forward to seeing the video. I once had a friend of mine, Gil Schaefer, say that he could listen to Sandy Stoddart read from the phone book for 2 hours straight and not get bored for a moment. And I've listened to Sandy read from the phone book, and it's true. And actually, Sandy, if you'd like to come up and read from the phone book, it would probably be more entertaining than what I might could say. But, and that's an image I'm not going to talk about either, other than to say that there's another dream I've had for a very long time. It goes along with the one that I had 22 years ago when some friends and I in New York started the Institute. And we dreamt about a school. It was a school of artists and architects, and it was based in New York, but actually it was more based in Rome, certainly emotionally at that point. And this is a plan for a school that's a kind of spin-off, I guess, or branching away from the Beaux-Arts Atelier, which will be based in Rome, and that we're very excited about. And I hope we'll have a strong relationship with the BAA and with the ICA and all of the wonderful chapters and so forth. And anyone that's interested in applying, just send me an email, and we'll talk. And those are some of the things we're going to do, but I'm not going to talk about that today. What I am going to talk about is something else that the Beaux-Arts Atelier students have been involved in the last few weeks. And it's one of those remarkable moments in a career and a life that, when you suddenly realize about yourself that you're in a place where you never expected to find yourself, you're way underqualified to be there. And you do your best to try and live up to the moment, because I know for sure that this is a project that working on it will be undoubtedly the most important thing I'll ever work on in my life. And I say that, I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it trying to be too serious either, other than the fact that it's the most important project that I could think of and be involved with. And I want to tell you a little bit about it, and that's why that Daniel Burnham quote is up there, because it was inspired in part by Daniel Burnham. Anybody recognize this picture? Good. My home, by the way, is to the north where it's dark. So once you get to Canada, the lights all stop, and that's why we look south with great envy, and why I came down here, because it's brighter down here. A little easier to draw in the light and in the dark. But it's inspired by this, and I wanted to tell you a story, because I think everybody has someone told me I wasn't allowed to tell stories. Pete Miller told me I couldn't tell stories about my childhood. So I'm sorry, Pete, but I'm going to tell you one. But I have a dream of New York City, and I think most of us have a dream of New York City. Sometimes it's a dream that is based in a reality, and sometimes it's one that we just had from watching a Woody Allen movie, and sometimes it's one that we just have a dream about. But mine involves a voyage and a train trip. When I was 10, my parents decided to move us to Europe, and my grandmother took me and my younger brother to New York for the first time by train. And I remember this, and it's like a dream, although I lived it, certainly, but it's been a long time since I was 10. And I remember arriving on the platform in New York and getting out. I was 10, but I'm pretty sure my grandmother, who was a very forceful Scottish lady, took my hand at that point in the crowd, and we went up the stairs, and we emerged into Grand Central Station, and I looked up and I saw the stars and the constellations and the universe above me and the great vault of Grand Central Station, and I couldn't believe it. I was, I thought I don't know what I thought it was, actually, although the image has stayed very vividly with me. So I want to show you something about, and you'll see that one of the names on this list here, across the bottom, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, this is like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. It goes like this: Washington, D.C., Union Station, I think restored, 20 years ago? Where's Christine? She's from Washington, she'd know. There's the interior of Washington, D.C.'s Union Station. Baltimore, Pennsylvania Station, restored on the interior. Philadelphia, 30th Street Station, which I saw being restored while I was working for John Blateau back in 1989, in the summer of 1989. Looking like that. Boston South Station, looking still very fine on the outside, somewhat not so fine on the inside, but still pretty good. And then, one of these things is really not like the others. And that story has preoccupied a lot of people for a long time, and there's been endless talk about this. The funny thing is that the endless talk about it, there's the inside. It's such a wonderful place to arrive into. What was Vincent Scully's great line about, we used to walk into New York like gods and now we scurry in like rats? I actually feel like a rat in one of those fractal experiments that we were just hearing about. I guess like a normal person, I get very anxious in here and try as fast as I can to find the exit, which I can never find. Usually find the men's room instead. So this is the dream. And I was at a meeting yesterday in New York, and the thing that's extraordinary about this as a dream is that it's a dream that a number of people have had very recently, simultaneously, although it's one that I've been having recurringly for 20 years. And so I was at a meeting yesterday in New York with some of the most powerful real estate developers, land use attorneys, real estate agents, architects, engineers, whom we convened through a couple of friends of mine who are connected to all those people to talk about rebuilding Penn Station. Why should we do that? Why would we do that? I mean, after all, we've lost it. We've got the post office. We could stick a perfectly good train station in there. Why would we want to rebuild an old building, after all? Well, the building was a dream of three men. Alexander Cassatt, and these guys walked the earth like heroes. You should read a new book that was out a few years ago, I just finished reading, called Conquering Gotham. It is one of the most exciting, extraordinary books I've read in the last several years. Alexander Cassatt came out of retirement to become the new president of the Pennsylvania Railway. He had no need to do it. He didn't need the money. He didn't need the prestige. He didn't need anything, but he had a vision. And the vision was that the Pennsylvania Railroad, the most powerful railroad company in America in the 19th century, was going to cross into Manhattan and through and into New England via a tunnel under the Hudson River. And people compared it to the building of the Suez Canal. In many ways, it was even more complicated than that, in particular because he was facing the most corrupt government in the Northern Hemisphere in Tammany Hall in New York City. And he came to New York at the beginning of the project, and he gave a speech, and he said, the Pennsylvania Railroad will not pay a single penny of bribery or of graft of any other kind when we build this project. And he was able to accomplish the dream with the help of two men. This guy, who we all know and love and revere, Charles McKim, who was going through one of the worst periods of his life. He just had to fire his own partner, Stanford White, and put him on a salary because White had gotten himself into so much debt that the firm was in danger. He was suffering from chronic depression and was virtually homeless by this point in his life. And luckily had a daughter who was very close to him and who supported him. And in the meantime, he was producing and designing some of the grandest buildings this country's ever seen. And this man, whose name nobody knows about anymore, whose name was Seth Low, who was the first progressive mayor of New York City, who partnered with Cassatt to fight Tammany Hall, which was entirely in control of New York City, to get this building built, this tunnel built, and to clean up the Tenderloin, which was the worst neighborhood in New York City, and which at the time had white slaves living in it, much as there are in other parts of the world these days. So we were hardly, in fact, we may have been first in that. It was a real distinguishing honor. And their goal was to change that entire neighborhood of the city and to bring passengers who up until that point had to arrive by train on the coast of New Jersey and take a ferry, February, July, September, whenever it was, across into the city. And this is the dream they had, that they would tunnel from New Jersey through, is there a pointer that's associated with this thing? Yeah, well, I don't know. Anyway, you can see the thing that says Bergen Hill, I hope. Anyway, Bergen Hill is a hill on the Jersey Highlands. They had to tunnel through Bergen Hill, make it down the slope of Bergen Hill, under the Hudson River, which turned out to be alluvial silt, which was almost impossible to tunnel through, into Manhattan, create a great terminal in Manhattan, carry the tunnel all the way across the island of Manhattan, under the East River, and create a great rail yard in Long Island to connect to the Long Island Railway, and ultimately to trains going north to New England. And many people died, and they were in such trouble at one point, both with Tammany Hall and the Vanderbilts and everyone else, that Cassatt traveled regularly to Europe to try and talk his European bankers into not pulling all of the funds out of the Pennsylvania Railway, and their stock, which was one of the most highly valued stocks in the country at the time, was under severe attack, and they almost lost the company. This is the vision that McKim portrayed to Cassatt. They went to Rome. McKim, of course, was a Roman. There's no other way to call him. He was a Roman. I mean, he may have been called McKim and have been of Irish, Scottish stock, but he was a Roman at heart. And this is a painting by Cockerell of the Baths of Caracalla. And this is the vision that McKim gave to Cassatt for what the station should look like. There's one of the first renderings of it. This is kind of the rendering that you show up with under your arm and put up on an easel and say, well, how about the colonnade of St. Peter's for your train station? How would that do? There's one of the renderings of the interior of the Great Hall. The Great Hall was the largest room in the world. In fact, it was larger than the central room of the Baths of Caracalla when it was built. And there it is in all its glory when it first opened, as viewed from the Gimbel shop in New York across the way, up high. And that's what it looked like when you went into it, through the great portico. And of course, these are views of the inside. And I'm sure I'm not showing you things that you haven't seen before, but it gives you some idea of something about it. And I'll show you a little bit more about it later. Of course, the great train shed. So what was this? This was Rome and Paris in New York. Right? This is the Gare d'Orsay. The other part is St. Peter's. The other part is the Baths of Caracalla. And where had McKim gone to school? In Paris and in Rome. And, you know. So he had a vision for New York that was European and that utterly changed the way that New Yorkers felt about themselves, because this building put them in a category of culture and architectural achievement which had otherwise never been really dreamed of, I think, in the United States. And this is what happened. In 1963, a group of people decided, because the railway was in trouble and the building was dirty and so on and on and on, and because we needed a much more beautiful building built here, to condemn it. And it took 3 years to tear down. It's funny that Alex Creswell was talking about making paintings of this subject earlier today. Kind of hoping that he might be interested in this project. We'll see. And here they are taking down the great eagles, which are now scattered hither and yon all over the place, in the Central Park Zoo, in the Brooklyn Museum, and on a bridge in Philadelphia, and ignominiously in front of the appalling building they built on the great portico. And there it is in all of its ending glory, looking like one of Alex's silent houses. Wish, Alex, you'd been here to paint this, but how old were you then? You were already painting the way you do then, weren't you? Yeah, I thought so. And there it is, just about gone. Okay, so people say, how could we possibly do that? I mean, first of all, and this is what's very interesting about the meeting, and I I would call myself a minor participant in this meeting, except that I organized it, but I didn't say all that much other than showing these images because there were way more qualified people at this meeting, one of whom is an architect I'm currently working with in New York, designing some hotels, who has figured out, because his job is to analyze zoning and land use and land transfers and FARs and all the things that he does very, very well, that it's entirely likely that we could rebuild this building for free and that the city could end up with money in its coffers afterwards. Because there are so many available air rights over the building itself and in the immediately surrounding neighborhood, and given the current valuation of FAR in New York City, he thinks conservatively you could raise $3 to $5 billion by selling those air rights. The building was 500,000 square feet. A stone building might cost $1,000 to $1,500 a square foot. So you're looking at a $500 to $750 million station, infrastructure. You could do a lot of affordable housing with a few $1 billion left over. Could we rebuild it? Should we rebuild it? Okay. There are some, I think, people that we ought to be inspired by. Some of them are the citizens of Dresden, who lived in one of the most beautiful cities in all of the world. This is what Dresden looked like, this great Baroque city on the river. There it is from the river with its spires and domes and bridges and parks and trees and everything else, and its great cathedral, the Marienkirche, and that's what happened to it in 1945. As we all know, it was famously firebombed. The stones themselves burned in this city. And that's what happened to the Marienkirche, and it was rubble, burnt rubble at that. And about 20 years ago, a group of citizens got together and decided that they wanted their city back, and they built that. And they built that, which is the restored cathedral in the center of the city. And you can see they used some of the old material to remind them of what had happened, because all the black stones are original material and all the white stones are new material. They built it in load-bearing masonry and in bronze and gold and plaster and all the things we've been hearing about at this conference. And it is now one of the most popular tourist destinations on Earth, unsurprisingly. I went on a trip to Moscow a few years ago to meet with a client, and we didn't have a lot of time, but we were staying very close to Red Square, and we were right in the center of Moscow, and we would go out at night when we weren't busy with our meetings and wander around. And we went to visit a rather remarkable achievement in Moscow. Moscow, right? This is the great Church of Christ the Savior in Moscow. It's the Cathedral of Moscow as it stood. And this is what Stalin did to it. I'm not sure the date. Michael might know the date. Sometime in the 1930s. And this is what he built there. Really big swimming pool. Valuable. And about 10 years ago, Medvedev and Putin decided that the swimming pool was not really that much use, and that they were going to put their cathedral back. And they rebuilt it stone by stone, bronze, gilding, the whole thing is there inside and out. It is the most stunning thing you can imagine. Particularly when you know that and that and that. So they've reversed the evil course of history and made something good. And I think we all have a dream of New York. Some of us dream of a New York like that. That's one of the entries into the Municipal Arts Society recent ideas for a new Penn Station on the site of the old Penn Station by Diller Scofidio Renfrew. I taught at Princeton, where I went to school. I could be doing work like that. Oh well. I did some work like that 20 years ago when we first started the Classicist. I imagined the old Penn Station rising. I called it the Phoenix of 7th Avenue, out of the ruins of the new Penn Station, arising out of the old Penn Station. So you see the ruins in the foreground and the Farley Post Office, which everyone was talking about, but in the background you see old Penn Station. And what's interesting about all of this is that, so I went to the New York Historical Society a week and a half ago in preparation for the meeting. There are 353 drawings from the McKim and White office of Penn Station. And I don't know if you can read, you probably can't from a distance, but everything from the details of the curbs, the furniture, the ironwork, the stairs, the vaulting, the overall drawings. You know, some industrious student or other could be hired and turn that all into CAD, and we'd have the beginning of a modern project, wouldn't we? yeah, we'd have to do some ADA work and some modern fire safety work and some other things, but the irony is that it would still be an absolutely brilliant train station. And we could also use the Farley Post Office. Frankly, we need the track room anyway, so you could separate, Amtrak from New Jersey Transit, from other things, and build a nice big building over, part of Farley and still keep the historical outside. And so we've been dreaming about that. There's one of the great presentation drawings of McKim's whole vision for the thing, so you can see Farley in the foreground, the great train shed, and then of course the great hall beyond that. These super blocks that they created, and by buying up all this property and creating double wide blocks, there it is, looking almost brand new, amazingly. And there's the plan, of course, with its great entry from 7th Avenue, which makes far more sense than moving the entry way over to between 8th and 9th Avenue, if you know New York, and a view of the Great Hall again. And I'm just going to show you some images of what it was like and what it would be like. Yeah, okay, the cars would be uglier. The people would be much less elegantly dressed. There wouldn't be smoke in the air, so you wouldn't get Creswellian light falling through because no one smokes anymore. Well, they'd be puffing on e-cigarettes, I guess. It was a Piranesian vision of a public building. There it is in, I think, a shot from a film, the smoke-filled room. There it is, looking just unbelievable, I guess is the only way to describe that. I wish I'd been old enough, or my parents had brought me here and I had been able to experience this. I'm going to ask at the end of this anyone to raise their hand who actually did go through Penn Station when it was still standing. There's another great image of it with the light pouring in, just the way Alex describes, in the great Byzantine church in Venice, or in his wonderful Baroque interiors in Sicily. The great train shed, which had, by the way, a glass block floor, super modern floor that let light penetrate down to the track level, even under the floor. And there, I like this picture because I think that's taken right before it was opened, and that's what it would look like if we rebuilt it. And there's a wonderful new children's book which you go and get, which I got and I read to my kids, that actually recreates the station in these wonderful paintings. They're just lovely, with all the people and the porters and the baggage and everything moving around, and it looks all fresh and new and bright. And so the BAA students got involved in this because I thought, why not? You should really work on real projects, and we may as well start with something small and modest to begin with. No, but seriously, what's great about a bunch of students working on a project like this is because it's a project of creative recreation, right? The goal here is to try to understand what McKim and his colleagues created and recreate it, which means having to put yourself into their shoes, to think very carefully about it. We actually imagined a couple of things that gave my colleagues in New York even bigger heart attack, because I suggested we take down one Penn Plaza as well and make a Bryant Park on the north side of the train station, which would immediately increase all the real estate value around it, and we need more parks like that in New York City, and put the towers, instead of in the Corbusian fashion bang in the middle of the block, on the ends, on the avenues, where they could anchor the whole composition. And you'll see in a minute. So this is what it would look like if we're going up again. Yeah, okay, people wouldn't be as elegantly dressed, but I'm trying to picture that in about 2017, which is probably how long it's going to take to do the air rights transfers to make this happen. And it'll end up looking like that. And we'll all get to use it. And rich and poor, and far and wide, and foreigner and native, and so on, will once again be able to walk into New York like a god, or at least like a human being, as Nero once said in his famous line about when his palace was completed, and he said, "Now I can finally start to live like a human being." And here are a couple of renderings made by the Beaux-Arts Atelier students. Peter Spalding, Christopher Weeks, Mark Hendricks, and group, and the rest of them were a little busy out here in Utah, but some of them managed to get involved in this, and they're going to be involved in this project as we go forward, because I can think of no better apprenticeship than working on this project with the people who are going to be involved with it. And there is the view of what it might look like, with some new towers and things rising around it, looking a little bit like zombie apocalypse in this one. I think the charcoal drawing got away from us a little bit here, but we're going to make some wash renderings of this that'll make everybody sit up and take notice. And that's my dream. Dreams really do come true. I'd like to walk with my children out of that train station one day and into New York City. Thank you.